to the last video of the week, and this is another double bill, and it's a what the hell is this? When I saw the first film in the double bill, Old, I knew I had to put it Life Force instantly. I just had to. I was really planning doing Life Force, or what the hell is this? I was really well at plans for October. It was like, I'm definitely doing this in October of Life Force. But then when I saw Old, it was like, alright, this has to go with Life Force, and what the hell is this? These two are perfect together. These are like, these are made for each other. Because they're both enjoyable films that are complete messes in lots of ways. They're made by interesting directors who can go either way. And they're both filmed with lots of ideas. Probably too many ideas for what they're doing. And they have some weird narrative choices throughout the film. But they're also films I'd happily watch anytime. So this is what the hell is this? Is like, this is not a warning against any of these films. This is like, go watch them, they're fun. But they are messy. They are really messy. So we'll start with Old, because Old's the newest one. And I have a feeling Life Force is the one to end with. So Old is the new Shyamalan film. As you know, if you watch Shyamalan films, they can go anywhere. Like, he does not have an inner critic. Like, he does not seem to have that voice saying, are you sure about this? Are you really sure about this? Doesn't seem to have that. Doesn't seem to have a producer saying, that's not how people talk. You need to rewrite it. He finances his own script films now. So he doesn't have that person. He's gone George Lucas completely in the sense that he doesn't have that person saying, there's lots of good stuff here, but these 3 or 4 things, they need sorted because they'll mess up the whole film. So it's a pure auteur thing. It's, for good and bad, it's a Shyamalan film. I like a lot of these Shyamalan films now. The weirder he gets, the better for me. I mean, The Happening is a must-see. Because it's a mess, but it's fascinating. I mean, some of his early films are still really good. Like Unbreakable is really good. Sixth Sense is good. Even though, if you know there's a twist in the end, you'll spot the twist pretty quick. I like The Village despite the wonky ending. I think Signed is a mess, but it's a mess only Shyamalan can make. It's years later you can just see how much of a mess it is and how Shyamalan it is. Because it is a stupid twist of it's aliens who invade who can't stand water, even though most of the planet's made of water. It's like, what? That's typical Shyamalan. I mean, Lady in the Water and After Earth are the two, what I'd call 2 worst films in the sense of they're unwatchable. They are genuinely unwatchable films. It's like you'd really have to get tortured me to watch them again. But then again, Last Airbender's generally just as bad as them, and I've seen that about 2 or 3 times. And I adore Last Airbender. I adore Avatar, the actual the animated thing that it's based on. The film's terrible, but I'd happily rewatch it because it's so bizarre. And you get Happening as well, and it's like, this guy has no sense of, I shouldn't do that. So he's come back in recent years with a low budget film that did well with Blumhouse. He did the Split and he did the Glass, which are the 2 Unbreakable sequels. Split did really well received. Glass had mixed reactions. I like Glass. I really like Glass. But I know a lot of people didn't, but I really did. I like all the trilogy. Even though there's flaws, I don't care, I like it. Now this is his next one. And it's back to weird Shyamalan. It's really back to weirdness. Because there's whole sections of this film that's like, what were you thinking? There's plots in here that are weird as hell. And the actual logic of the whole thing doesn't hold up for a second. It's like, the frustrating thing in this film is there's lots of flaws in the first 2/3, right? But if you ended at a certain point in the film, when something happens, you could have just ended the film and it'd have been good. You know, you could have just done that. But no, he has to go on. So, I'm going to avoid talking about that bit. I'll talk about Jim the other parts of the film, but I'll avoid the ending. But just know it's not the best part of the film. It's pure Shyamalan in bad ways and twisted, complicated ways, and explain something you didn't need to explain. It's basically like taking everything that you don't need to explain because it's creepy you don't explain it, then explain it all and you just take away all the drive from it. It's that kind of ending that only Shyamalan would think is a good idea. But there's lots of good stuff before that. So the idea is these couples go to this beach. They're in this health resort to get better. A lot of them have like issues. But they're going to a beach, and so taking this special beach is they say no one goes there. So you get a day there and you can relax and you just unwind. So these different people all go to the beach, and then they find out in this beach, it's a special beach where you start aging rapidly. So a whole day in that beach will basically be your whole life. So you'll age from, you can start off as a young child and you end up middle aged by the end of the day. If you start off middle aged, you're going to be dead by the end of the day. There's all these things happening, and there's a slow build of seeing them figuring it out and then try to figure out what to do. So, and that a lot of ways that's creepy. It's a creepy idea. That's all this film had to do. The film could have done nothing else but that, and it would have been a much better film. That was a film people wanted to see, but Shyamalan had to add the ending, which was weird. But you have to. One of the reasons why I'm not going to do a spoiler here is you can't explain how weird this ending is. You have to see it. Right, so, but this whole section, you get this. In the beginning, you get the build up, but you get all the character stuff, and you realise they're all types. No one gets that much depth to them. Everyone's done as types. And Shyamalan, as a director, is really interested in the visuals of moving through the landscape and stuff. But he seems less interested in directing actors. He seems to let them be and let them try and fill in stuff as they go. But it's almost like if someone said, this line is a bit awkward, but like, to say it anyway. Because people look lost sometimes in the dialogue scenes. Because it's as if they know they've got something that doesn't make sense. No one would say that. And there's that feeling of the film, a lot through the film, with sometimes it's fine, other times it's really awkward. And there's that sense of that weirdness through the film. And again, because no one's telling them, don't do that. So I think that's what you're going to do with Shyamalan from now on. Or basically just be used to it, but now it's like, you have no idea what's coming with this guy. It could be a good film or a bad film, you don't know. We'll see when the next film gets released what it's like. And there's lots of creepy stuff. There's a operation scene early on where they have to take a tumour out of somebody and the flesh is healing really quickly. That's really creepy. It's like one of the best bits of the film. It's really creepy because it deals with the idea of a cancerous tumour, which is scary in its own, and also dealing with the supernatural. And there's lots of weird things like that when they go into this cave and they just black out and they can't. The cave taking them back out of the beach. You just black out and you find yourself wandering back to the beach. There's stuff like that that's great. There's elements of people trying to escape the beach and what happens to them and the weird supernaturalistic feel to it all. All of that is great. The idea of someone aging and how it affects you. The idea that you know you're going to die that day. All that's great. But there's also weird stuff. Like, the children grow up quickly. They go from being young children to being teenagers, and suddenly one of them's having sex with another one. And it's like, they're still meant to children. It's weird. It's full of that stuff. It's like, how does this happen? In a film. How did someone not say to them, just don't. Just don't. Because anyone watching that film is like, just, you haven't gone there, have you? There's stuff like that that only Shyamalan would do, so it makes it interesting. But it's also like, wow, that's weird. That's really strange. So the film's full of that. I mean, there's a doctor who is a bit schizo, and you watch them tweak out sometime when it's weird, and it needed to be rewritten to make it creepier. It never was, and it was like, and it's one of those half explained, half explored ideas that don't really work. There's a rapper who's on the beach before them, who started aging before them, who's also got the worst name ever. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a name I know a rapper would ever be called. Because rapping's a bit bragging, and this is almost like a middle class version of a rapper. It's that kind of thing. There's stuff like that throughout. But there's a lot of really moving sequences. The idea of this couple who are having problems with each other, and suddenly they're aging, and watch their children grow up really quickly, and they're aging, and they're starting to lose their hearing and sight and things. And a lot of that's creepy and it's very moving. So it goes from crazy to moving to crazy. It's an experience like none other. It's just weird. And then you get to the explanation at the end, which is just weird as hell. It makes no sense. It really doesn't make any sense. It's like, just lose that section. And it's a film that you feel should have had been a gutsier ending. It should have had, there was a potential to make it really creepy at the end, and it didn't go that way. They went much more the adventure story way, and it was kind of disappointing, because this could have been really scary if they'd followed all the logic to the end, but it didn't. It's just this weird, fascinating mess of a film that I can't wait to watch again. It's just a weird one. It's not quite as crazy as Malignant, though. Malignant's still the, what the hell is this, King of the Year. No one's going to beat Malignant for absolute crazy. But this gets a silver. It's just that Malignant's ending was so nuts that nothing can compete with it. This one's weird though. This one's really weird. But yeah, it's still very, very highly recommended. And that's the normal one compared to Lifeforce. Now, Lifeforce is Toby Hooper on what pretty much everyone on the set says was a lot of cocaine. It's pretty much in the documentary that goes with the arrow thing, people were saying half the set was coked up, and some people were actually saying Toby Hooper was coked up too. Other people were saying he was highly caffeinated. He had a Dr. Pepper always in his hand, and he had a cigar always in his hand, and apparently he was very hyper throughout the film. So, and he watched the film and he was like, yes, this is a film made on cocaine. This is everything's weird and disconnected. It's in a weird, strange way. And it's just odd the whole way through. It's based on a novel called Space Vampires. Yep, this is a Canon film. Canon saw a novel called Space Vampires and thought, that's a mega budget movie in the making. They hired Dan O'Bannon to write it, and he wrote this weird script. They brought in other writers to rewrite them after that. Like the guy who, Michael Armstrong, who did quite a lot of horror films in the 60s and 70s, he came in to rewrite it, and he was dealing with a lot of the effects stuff, and he was rewriting that and dealing with the storyboard artists. Sometimes not in collaboration with Toby Hooper. And it's weird because some of those sequences either are too short or too long, and they're weirdly placed. And it does feel like there's two films going on a lot of the time. And there's two different cuts of this film, both in the Arrows release. You've got the international cut, which is the cut I first saw, that makes a lot more sense. There's a shorter version, the American cut, that makes a lot less sense and is insane, and you'll never be able to fault anything there. It's like, I don't know how you could go through that American cut and make any sense of it. It's nuts. Even the European cut is completely nuts. But it's a half hour to explain some of the nuts. And there's all these sequences all done by old school practical effects. Some effects look great, and some effects look cheap as hell. And it's jumps from shot to shot what they're going to be. There's this whole sequence at the beginning where they're going towards Halley's Comet, which has a spaceship inside it, which has the space vampires. And you think, okay, you're going to do an alien thing, a slow build to that. No, it's like, you're there. It's like, why have that when you don't do the build? So is that just cutting it out just for running time, or did they actually just only have so much money. But it is a bit disappointing. And then when you get there, you get to this sequence where you've got these three vampires who are all naked and all look like humans. And it's like, what? I mean, it's like, there is an explanation later on about why they do that, what's going on. But it doesn't come across as, oh, that's creepy. It comes across as, that's weird and stupid. And that's the whole film like that. And that's why it's wonderful. You know, so they take these bodies back with them. Of course you do. Without test, of course you take the bodies back. And then most of the crew end up dead. It's sort of like the Demeter from Dracula. It's very much based on Dracula, this story. But it's a female vampire rather than a male vampire. So all these people are dead as if they were a Demeter from Dracula novel. Except for the captain who escaped in the safety pod. And then now him and her have this mind thing. Him and the vampire, both of them have this mind thing connection. So he gets back to Earth. They've already found the vampires. And they've seen something weird. And these vampires escaped. And they bring the American captain back. Of course, he's got a link with her. And they're going through different places in Britain to try and track her down. And they end up in Patrick Stewart's madhouse. Because of course you do a madhouse in a vampire story. And this all sounds very meandering. Because the film is very meandering and episodic. And it doesn't stick to anything. Like you go to one section, it's almost like a full section of this movie. Then it goes to another section, another movie. There's whole movies in this movie, and they don't all connect up at all. And it is kind of feels like it's a coked out film because nothing connects. And a lot of the stuff it should be scary. Well, the lights are all on, so it's not scary, but they're very good special effects. But the film's so impatient, there's never enough time to create mood. So you just get a sense of this weird stuff happening, and it's all very strange. But it's wonderful. It really is wonderful. And you have these vampires who take the life force out of you, the energy, your soul, take them out of you. So there's all this weird scientific gobbledygook mixed with supernatural, and none of it works as a scary idea. It's all very based on Quatermass stuff, but they don't underplay it and make you paranoid. They just say it out all the time, always out loud, everything stated, usually in overwritten speech. It's never scary, but it's wonderfully bad. So it's great. And you've Steve Rails back as the lead captain, and he's wooden as hell in this film. He's like the worst actor in this film by a mile. Which again makes it hilarious, because everyone else is all these British character actors trying their best with really absurd material. Patrick Stewart gets some of the most weird stuff to say and do in the film, and he's trying to sell it like crazy, no matter how nuts it gets. And it's hilarious to watch. This is a big 1-2 with June, where he was doing really crazy stuff in these weird films before it became Patrick Stewart Star Trek. So, and you've got Colin Firth as the SAS captain. He's having a great time. He's a completely different film from everyone else. He's in this cool film. You want to see what film he's in. What film he thinks he's in is a film you should be watching. Because he's like so much better than everyone else. Because he's just no nonsense. He's having a lot of fun. He's got a sense of humour. And he steals the movie. This weird movie. You've got Frank Finlay as the kind of crazy Van Helsing type of character who's a doctor who's interested in death, and he's just nuts. And he knows he's in a trashy movie, and he's camping it up like crazy. Anytime he's on screen, it's great fun. You have this weird stuff with these blood clots that are floating around this helicopter at one point. You've got all these character actors showing up in bit parts. Everything's set in Britain, the end of the world set takes place in Britain, so everything looks cheap and very 80s, but kind of wonderful at the same time. London's completely trashed with zombies at the end. The whole film was just weird. I mean, I'm explaining all of this, and I'm sure when you listen, you're probably wondering, what's this film even about? I don't know. It's a space vampire attack, and trying to take our souls and transfer them back to their ship. That's their energy source. And that's the plot. And they are killed by iron stakes through the heart still. it's just wonderful. It's so wonderful. It's so insane. I watch this film every 3 or 4 years. It's a blast. It's so nuts. Mathilda May is the lead vampire. I watched her naked for most of the film. And it's hilarious how gratuitous it is. It's like at any point they could have put some clothes on her. They put clothes in the males quite quickly, but not her, and it's like, wow, this is gratuitous. There's another amazing scene where Railsbeck is interrogating this masochist in the loo bin who was once infected by the space vampire and is now just a bit crazy. And it's like, you should never do this scene in a film now. It's just, he's beating her up and everything, and it's like, wow. How can you even do this in the 80s? This is just straight out abuse. This is weird. The whole film's that, it's like, who is in charge? And it's like, it's a canon film. No one's in charge. They give him told people money and they've let him make his film, and it's a typical canon film. It's really strange. But the best was to come because they also gave Toby Hooper money for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which is just so good. I adore Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. That and Life Force are just peak 80s Toby Hooper in the sense that, yeah, they're nuts, but they're way more interesting than Poltergeist, which he directed. These are much more interesting films. So, Life Force is so wonderful. It and Old, they're like Halloween gifts from crazy gods. You know, you should see them this Halloween and enjoy them. They're so weird, they're so strange. And at the end of it, you're thinking, what the hell is this I've been watching? What is going on here? They're perfect. What the hell is this films? But they are just wonderful to watch. They're just, I just want to watch them again just after talking about them. They're so good and so strange and so not caring about good taste in any possible way. These are pure cult films. These are just like, you couldn't make these films intentionally. You had to go on for the director to go a bit crazy during making a film to get these films. I've no idea what Shyamalan was thinking during Old. I'd love to know, because it's such a wonderfully watched film. I adore Old, but it is so weird. And Life Force is the same. Although, I mean, listen to the documentary about Life Force. I think what most people think was, can I get more cocaine? That's the impression you get from this documentary. You know, these are two must-sees for Halloween. These are gems. These are so good. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you saw my enthusiasm for these ones. And this is the start of the Halloween month. So see you later.